would enjoy
I'm
that.
having a heart attack for Kurt. Like, these are two women he was going to propose to.
Well, he should not to Rachel. That was insane. I'm sorry. That's the craziest he has ever been, including like they mind controlled me into being a priest. Like he has never been crazier than when he was like, I'm going to propose to my wife to be Rachel Summers. That was psychotic behavior, and God love him. But like, no, you need to see your therapist. You need to get a psychiatrist on the line. You need to take.
Welcome back, everybody. I keep doing this NPR voice. It's a stupid joke. Why do I keep making the same joke? Because I'm not funny. Why?
Because that's not even like the best one you've made, to be honest. But it's okay.
I don't know, Lord. Anyway. I don't know. Well, thank you so much. Welcome, everybody, back to Simply Amazing, the show about Nightcrawler for Nightcrawler fans, and also for anyone out there who loves Amanda Sefton, who we're going to be talking about today. Before we get into it, we do have an absolutely super amazing guest today. But before we get into that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself and my co-host. I am Lisa, aka the OG Nocturne, and my beautiful, lovely, fabulous co-host.
What's up, guys? My name is Lauren, and I'm your friendly neighborhood bite, and I am very, very excited about this guest, because I am a huge fan of his pod, so I'm really excited and honored that he is joining us today. So, Lisa, I'll let you do the big introduction this time.
Absolutely. So I almost feel like we get the chance to, he's like on the other side, because usually he's asking people about their faves, right? And now this time we get to ask him about one of his faves, but we are super blessed and super excited because I have been a big fan of the pod for a very long time. I started listening to CEREBRO way back with episode 2, which was Nightcrawler. And so we are absolutely excited to have Connor from CEREBRO here to talk to us about Amanda Sefton. So hi, Connor.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Lisa. Thank you for inviting me. I know you really want to do this. It's been our schedules have not linked up. You were like you were traveling for work, then I was traveling for work. That it was we both travel a lot for work. Actually, I guess is the bottom line. But it was a funny idea because you were like I don't understand how someone can be like, Nightcrawler's fine, but be like very into Nightcrawler's foster sister / girlfriend character, because that is odd, right? Like that is an unusual, my thing is like, I love, I care more about female characters. I learned that from Chris Claremont. It's just like, it is my way. I'm also just like a gay guy. So that's just like, but I love witches. I love witches and witchcraft and all that. I saw the Wizard of Oz and Little Mermaid when I was a kid, like a little kid, like 3. And I just was forever like, obsessed with like good witches and bad witches and this and that and the other thing. So characters like Magik or Celine or Madeline Pryor, like they all appeal to me on that level.
Wanda Maximoff?
Not an X-Men character, so I didn't care. Like that was like it just I never had a problem with her until the aughts when all of that shit went down. I mean, again, like, she's not real. People were asking me on Twitter, they were like, have you forgiven Wanda after Child Magneto? I was like, Wanda's not a real person. Like I don't she's fictional. So I was like, I'm glad the storyline is resolved, but I haven't needed to like forgive her. Not real.
Wanda's not doing a 12-step on her step 9.
Like she's not making amends to me. She doesn't exist. Like it's really okay. But like, am I cool with her narratively? Sure. Like, let's just move on is sort of my attitude at this point, because we've done it to death, and I do think it needed to be done like affirmatively one last time, and I think that was smart. But now I think we're done with it. I liked her in the 90s. When she got her new costumes. First, there was the one where she was like Onslaught era. There was the one with the boots. It was like post Force Works. She's wearing those boots in her Hellfire Gala look this year, and she had like very vivid red hair. I hated the hair, but I liked the costume. And then and I liked her in George Perez and Kurt Busiek and George Perez's run on Avengers, which I did read because I was a Carol Danvers fan, because of the Chris Claremont of it all. And that was her, like, that's Carol's alcoholism arc. So I read that stuff. And that's also when Busiek had wanted to get more in touch with her heritage. And so he designed the costume to, like, have some traditional
it was more
elements.
Like,
it looked kind of stereotypy, but a nice thought, right? To, like, actually ground the character in her culture.
That's
somewhat.
A way to speak of that time period.
I know Kurt, and he's a really good guy, and I think that it was definitely, like, the best of intentions there. I understand if people think it's maybe a little on the nose, you know what I mean?
It was a little Party City, just a little bit, right? Like,
yeah, and she's, like, doing dances from Carmen and stuff, and you're like, okay, we get it. Like, you know, it's a little...
Well,
so
there's something about comics that's very theatrical and very, almost Broadway in a way, where everything's a little bit over the top and like playing for the back row. And so sometimes you have to hit people over the head with a brick in order, for them to get it. So things are a little bit more than they have to be.
But yeah, I was really just reading X-Men most of the time. And so the characters who were magical who came into X-Men, it was interesting because they weren't, like, supposed to be there, right? Like, so Illyana is a mutant, Selina's a mutant. Those characters you, like, understand, but Amanda and Margali that's just Chris Claremont being weird. Like, that's just Chris Claremont going, like, what if Kurt's adoptive mother is a witch, and what if his sister was also a witch, who was adoptive sister, and they're in love? Like, it's a fairy tale story. I mean, Margali drags them to a illusory replica of Dante's Inferno that affects all five senses that she just creates with a spell. Sure, why not?
For Kurt's 21st birthday.
Yes. The
happy birthday, kid.
The famous birthday party where Wolverine gifts Kurt a framed picture of Wolverine.
Yeah, that was
So I love that annual. And here's the thing: is it weird to have a sexual and romantic relationship with your foster or adoptive sister? Obviously, in reality, yes. I think in the context, though, of their relationship, it's not that weird. They were the only kids, besides her actual biological sibling, at Djarmarkt. And even before Djarmarkt, when they were traveling in the caravan, it was, like, just them, really, as far as we ever see. And he was always... like, the fact that he wasn't their biological sibling was something they were very aware of always.
I mean, he didn't even share their last name. Like, he...
Well, they did retcon that he was Kurt Sardish and changed it to Wagner at one point after he left. And I don't like that, so I'm with you. But it doesn't make sense that he has the surname Wagner because he never knew the Count. So there's no...
That's true.
I choose not to worry about Kurt as an infant until such time, because it's been retconned so many times, until such time as they finally retcon it back to Mystique and Destiny and it's fixed. I'm just not going to.
Right.
That's where I'm at with it. You know
That's all that matters right there.
Round of applause there.
Yeah. Totally agree. Immortal X-Men came out this morning, the first issue. Have you read it yet? I'm not going to spoil if you. Well, I won't say any spoilers anyway, in case people haven't heard it. But there has never been a better time for Kurt to be Irene and Raven's child. So I'm hoping that will get fixed soon, because those characters are at the center of the whole franchise right now. And I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. So if we want him, and I'm excited for Legion of X, I think it's going to be fun. But I think if you want Kurt to remain important to the world of the X-Men outside of his own book, then tying him into those two women is a really good idea right now, because they're really significant now. So,
well, I mean, even Sinister says in Immortal X-Men, like, what the hell is this guy doing here?
Right.
So,
besides the fact that his mother or his father, in my opinion, is on the council. Well, now both of them are on the council with him, but there's just something very interesting about that whole dynamic. And there's so many layers of IP management that go into decisions like that, where it's like, we're changing the character's backstory or whatever. So I have no idea if that's something they're trying to do or have any intention to do, but it would be a cool time to do it. And I would love to see them do it.
Well, I don't see that many Azazel stands rising up.
Nor do I, right?
I don't think that's going to be an issue. I mean, you brought a lot of the current stuff. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just
No,
curious because my next thought was going to be, because I don't know Amanda as well as you, and I don't even think as well as Lisa. Where the heck is she in current time? Like, because
she has been trapped between dimensions out on the edge of heaven since the 2014 Chris Claremont Nightcrawler solo.
Lovely.
Yeah, so Chris does two very weird things in that mini with her. One is he has Kurt imply that Amanda is also adopted, which we know is not true, but Chris doesn't read comics he doesn't write. So but it's an important plot point several times in the 90s that Amanda is Margali's biological daughter because the Winding Way is a heritable mystical inheritance. So it's like a family thing. So that simply can't be true. But also, so I think he was to try and make the incest thing less incesty, but it doesn't get it. Like, it was already not biological. It doesn't matter who's related to who. The problem is that they were raised by the same woman and call her mom, both of them. That's what's weird about it. So he does that, and then he just writes her out because he decides to hook Kurt up with Bloody Bess, his new character, who is an alternate universe Betsy Braddock, maybe, who is a space pirate slave trader, but she feels bad about the slave trading, and now she's trying to be good. That's a choice. Here's what I'll say. Of post-1991 Claremont comics, I think that the Nightcrawler solo is a fun one. I recommend it to people if they like Nightcrawler, if they like Chris Claremont, if they want to read a more recent Chris Claremont comic that's pretty strong. It's all like, so there's a whole long arc with Amanda and Margali. Margali is so evil in this book, but that's the thing that I was thinking is like, she would be a really fun character to bring back now. Margali Sardish.
I'd love to see her come back.
She is not a mutant. And right now, since we have all of the mutant bad guys, for the most part, like Fenris has now gone rogue, Mikhail Rasputin's not on crew, but like for the most part, the mutant villains are on like quote unquote our team now, right? Because they've decided to play ball.
Right.
And in exchange for amnesty. So what's useful is finding classic X-Men villains who are not mutants that you could throw in as antagonists. I think Margali is a character who's begging for that. Celine just said in Immortal X-Men this morning, you all need me on this council because you have no mystical defenses. And if a powerful sorcerer were to attack this island, we would be in a lot of trouble. Well, guess what? Guess who's powerful enough that she handily defeated Doctor Strange one time? Like Margali Sardish, if the Winding Way is cycling up, is one of the most powerful sorcerers in the planet. So is Amanda, for that matter. But Amanda is all trapped in... I mean, if I got the opportunity to write an X-Men comic, I assure you I would fix that between pages with a data page and it would be fine. Like, she would be back and it would be fine. Because there's no reason to do that. It's just that it was very much, I'm writing this character out because I want to give him a new relationship. And so I have to deal with the classic relationship that he had in my old comics.
I don't think it would be hard to bring her back from... I mean,
Well, she just said, I have a task to complete before I can leave. And so you just be like, she completed the task.
Done. Yeah, she's done. Yeah,
that's exactly. Easy. Like,
she's done. She came back. You know what? She's been living in this little house in New Jersey for a while. And
yeah, she got an apartment in Hoboken. She was laying low. She got back into flight attending for a minute. So to get into Amanda, I guess, actually.
What would she be doing now, though? Because she's not a mutant, so she's not supposed to be on Krakoa, right?
That's why I think she would be interesting. I think that now is actually a really cool time to bring in the human love interest, characters like Mariko Yoshida, or I mean, I'd love to see, honestly, like more of a plot for North Star's husband. I've said this many times on the show, but like Kyle Jinadu, I don't get that relationship because I feel like he has not. Leah Williams did some work in X Factor that I was grateful for, and I think Marjorie Liu's like initial arc before the wedding is pretty good, but ever since the wedding, I don't feel like that character exists very much on the page, and I would love to see him get more of a plot. We remember that like in the Utopia period when he's introduced, he was uncomfortable with the idea of Utopia. So you would think he would similarly be like pretty uncomfortable with the idea of Krakoa and being the only human or one of like 2 or 3 that lives on Krakoa. So I'd like to see more for him. But, you know, I think that now is a good Yukio for Storm, whether or not they can say it explicitly. Please. But like these characters, I mean, Candy Southern's the dream, obviously, but she would be a little more complicated, I think, given the phalanx
can I throw in Alistair Stewart? I'd love to
Sure, I love Alistair Stewart. Actually, when Alicent, may she rest in peace, was mentioned in that data page on the alternate Earth in Excalibur 17, I gasped. It was like, Alicent Stewart. Yeah, I mean, I just think now is an interesting time with those characters because they might feel, and these are people who have been ride or die allies to the X-Men, they might feel rejected by Krakoa, and that would be an interesting thing to lean into. You know, if I were to get a chance to do something with Amanda, and I don't want to go into too much detail because who knows, and I might get to pitch at some point, but I would like to see her in the world that like Doctor Strange and those characters inhabit. I think that she is a natural bridge character between the X-Men books and characters like Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch. Illyana is also a natural conduit in that way, but Illyana is not, the way Illyana is characterized now, the way that she's written like ever since Bendis really, she's much more of like a warrior than like a scholar, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that they can complement each other in a nice way. I mean, like Amanda, obviously, when Illyana was dead for a long time, subbed in as ruler of Limbo and as Magik. So she was like Magik 2 for a bit there. They've always been kind of used as interchangeable characters. The minute that Illyana is gone in the 80s, Amanda Sefton shows up on Muir Island to do magical stuff for them after she's been gone for a while. The minute that and the minute that Illyana is dead, it's like, this is the witch character we have now if we need to do something witchy. And the minute that Illyana comes back, Belasco reconquers Limbo and kicks Amanda out. So it's very much like, okay, cool, like, you know, what, but I think they could really be two parts of an effective whole. Amanda is not the kind of person who's going to charge into battle with the Soul Sword, except in her very cool Abnett and Lanning miniseries that is unfortunately not collected anywhere, but is great.
It is not.
The art is weird, but it's a great little mini.
The art is very weird. It changes through it too.
They're doing a Vertigo thing. They're like trying to do Sandman or and it just doesn't quite work.
I felt that when I was reading. I was like, this feels very Sandman, and it was a little confusing at times, but it's a great little mini.
It characterizes her really well, which I appreciate, and it also, I think, really characterizes her relationship with Kurt as adults, rather than just flashing back all the time to them at the circus. It's like, here's how we relate now. That's the same reason my favorite Amanda stuff is actually the Roberto Aguirre Sacasa Nightcrawler solo.
I agree. I love
where she's the ruler of Limbo, and she has like two gay snakes that are like giant white albino gay snakes that live outside the castle and like greet guests. There's that great bit where Kurt's like, how do you know what I'm doing? And she's like, some people keep track of their exes with Google. Some of them use crystal balls. I do both, which I think is really fun.
My absolute favorite lines in any comic. I love
There is also that dream sequence where he's like thinking about his attraction to Aurora and to Christine Palmer and then to Amanda, and they all like sort of talk to him, and Amanda's like, so Kurt, am I your sister? Am I your girlfriend? What's going on? And it tackles it very head on in a way that I like, and it plays her as very much pragmatic, methodical. Like, she also, it turns out, hid the soul sword inside him to protect it without telling him about it. Like, she's sort of Emma Frost-ish, or like classic Betsy in that story. She's like, you didn't need to know, so I didn't tell you. I needed you to follow my plan, so I just did it without asking, because sometimes, Kurt, people have to save the world, and it's like not all about you. Like that, it's very sneaky. I like when characters are sneaky, and I like when female characters in particular are allowed to be, and this is one of the best things about the Claremont run, like allowed to be morally complicated in a way that, like, they don't have to be good girls all the time, or they don't have to be heroic all the time. Like, Amanda does evil stuff sometimes in The Pursuit. She believes that like the ends justify the means, and I always find characters like that interesting. And usually it's like Punisher or Wolverine or someone like that who gets to be that. And I like when, like, Elektra is very cool for a similar reason. Like, it just feels like it's with that also, though, it's like, ooh, Elektra's such a babe. And here you see them also do that, right? Like in that mini, the Magik outfit
100%.
becomes like a tube top and like a thong. You know, like it's crazy. It's very Witchblade, actually.
Yeah, and the art style back then was hysterical. Just like looking at her stomach, I was like, "What is that?" Like,
where are her organs? You know, like it was just like tits first, belly tattoo. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think I had a moment where I channeled my grandmother, where the scene where she's in the church where she meets Kurt, and I was like, she went into a church wearing that?
Like, yeah, like, honey, you
what do you...
My favorite thing about the Magik 2 costume is that the headdress with the horns that are made of silver.
Yeah.
Because she's dressed as Ilyana, but for Ilyana, like Ilyana, I said this in the Magik episode that I did with Leah Williams for CEREBRO, Ilyana grows horns because Limbo is inside her for real. And Amanda, to try and keep Belasco out, is playing dress up. And that's why, of course, it's very easy in the end for Belasco to kick her out. Because Limbo's not in her bones and blood in the same way, right?
Yeah.
For her, it was a costume, it was a role she was trying to play. And she failed because she doesn't have that personal connection, you know?
Yeah, she was basically a substitute teacher that got ran over by the class.
Yes, and even in the mini, where she's very impressive as the leader of Limbo, she's also not really in tune with it, right? Like, Sim is hiding just under her nose, disguised as someone else. All of the stuff with the Hell Realms, like, she's really good at bartering with the Doctor Strange characters, if you notice. Like, Dormammu and those people, like, that stuff is all really effective. But Limbo itself, which is like an X-Men place, she's like, it's like a mutant conquered this land, you know? Like, that's sort of how it feels to me. And
well, I mean, I think what I took from the mini was that, you know, everything she did to try and save Limbo actually worked against saving Limbo.
Correct. Because her instincts with regard to Limbo are off.
Yes.
And so I think that's an interesting character. She's always tried to fulfill a role, right? Like, in the 90s when she was on Excalibur and became Day Tripper, it was like, I'm going to be the Black Canary to your Green Arrow. Like, we're going to be a pair of superheroes. We're Nightcrawler and Day Tripper. We wear costumes that have similar color schemes. Like, we're going to do this. Without asking him, again, by the way. And Kurt is like, well, I would rather not do that, but okay. And they do start dating again. I mean, you know, it's just she wants to belong in a way that I think is interesting. I don't think that she, like, fetishizes mutants or any, like, I don't think she's a weird that way, but I think that she does feel left out because Kurt was her whole world and there's this big part of his life that she can't directly relate to. And she was a member of the X-Men, like, in the 80s briefly. Like, she's like, really, she's made her bones. Like, she has been in Christ. She fought the Reavers with them on Muir Island. She's fought the Dire Wraiths with them. Like, she's been in the trenches with them. So I think that it hurts her to some extent that she will never be really part of the club. Like, I remember when Kurt died in Second Coming, there's a funny joke where it's Cyclops is talking to someone. I forgot who it is. And it's like, has someone told Kurt's girlfriend? It's, the other person's like, is it his girlfriend or his sister? And Scott's like, it's complicated. Yeah. But the fact that, and that's a funny joke, but the fact that they're referring to her in those terms rather than like our friend Amanda,
right,
is telling, right? Like, they never really welcome her in. And after she gets kicked out of Limbo in Academy X, you don't get much. Like, in the background, you hear that she and Doctor Strange are helping Pixie with, like, her new condition, but you never really get much with her again until Claremont. I mean, there weren't really that many writers that interested in using her, I think, is part of it. She's one of those Claremont dames that he brings back when he gets a chance to, but then he decided to write her out. And so nobody's brought her back. Because I feel like only I care. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it's funny how you mentioned, like, the other X-Men clearly didn't take her seriously as her own person. It was always just she was connected to Kurt in some way. It's almost
she's
like
Kurt's girlfriend, sister.
Right, and writers and creators treat her that way, like maybe Claremont had bigger plans for her, but because he set the precedent, because that was his character, and so if he set the precedent that you could just write her out, everybody else is treating her the same way. Which
Exactly.
Is like, why would you do that when she, like, that 90s Minnie is actually really freaking cool for what it is. Because,
it's really cool.
She's that powerful and stuff, and like, yeah, it sucks they just throw away, and like, that's all the fandom knows her as. It's like, oh, well, it's that awkward thing about Kurt.
Well, and that's the other thing is, like, Kurt has never really had otherwise a real love interest that has lasted in any kind of way. I mean, I know that Lisa is like a Nocturne fan who wants Kurt and Wanda to get together in 616. I don't want that.
Fair.
And I think it's unlikely to happen because Wanda is an Avengers character and they're managed by different offices, and I just don't see it. I mean, we know for a fact that Jonathan Hickman, was told he could not have Aurora and Black Panther have a baby. So if they're going to say no to Jonathan Hickman about that, I feel like
hey, listen,
Nightcrawler and the Scarlet Witch are probably not getting together when the Scarlet Witch just won an Emmy. Like, I don't think that's going to happen.
Fair.
But otherwise, none of his love interests have really stuck. I love Cerise. I think she's a lot of fun, but that's a very short-lived character. I am hoping that Al Ewing will bring her in for X-Men Red. She's a Shi'ar mutant. She has red energy powers. Her name is Cherry in French. Like, it's perfect, right? Like,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And he just pulled out Micromax for the X-Men vote. So clearly he's read the Alan Davis Excalibur, like, recently, because otherwise why would Micromax even occur to you? But anyway, that's just, so I like Cerise. She's fun. I like Christine Palmer in that solo series. But those characters never really stuck as love interests for Kurt. If you want to read Logan as a love interest for Kurt, then there's that, but that's not textual, except that cover that Greg Rucka had Asad Ribich draw. But like it's just not, it's not quite the same thing, right? So I think that Amanda deserves another go on some level, in the way that, like, I mean, you look at Polaris, who's having a real renaissance right now. Polaris for many years was Havoc's girlfriend, even though she joins the X-Men before him in the 60s. But it's very easy for the male character to become the focus. And once they were in X Factor together in the 90s, she very much became like the Jean to his Scott in the 90s. Like, because again, under Claremont, Jean's the important character and Scott is the one revolving around her. But in the 90s, it's all about Scott and Logan, and like Jean is sort of like hopping around in the love triangle, but it's not really about Jean. I think that you look at Polaris, who's just like becoming a huge star these days under Jerry Duggan. I just think you need a writer who cares and who has an idea for the character. And I would love to see Amanda interfacing again, like between the mutants and the mystical world, because I think they need that. And while I love Celine, depending on Celine is probably a bad idea. So it would be
well, I mean, look what she did. Look what she just did in Immortal X-Men. Like, she did get her way, and,
and
which I thought that was
not too many spoilers,
interesting.
Well, the funny thing is, like, well, I mean, this is getting too many spoilers probably, but like, the implication is that wasn't supposed to happen, because Sinister's very surprised that's what happens. She was supposed to be bluffing. True. So it seems like things are changing in a way that...
Well, I mean, a lot of things weren't supposed to happen according to Sinister, right?
Correct. So I love that Celine is getting her moment. I just think she's a funny character. I loved her in X-Corp, and I'm glad that she's in this first arc of Immortal, and I'd love to see her land somewhere. I would love to write a Celine Infinity comic where she just like explains history to you, like history of the Marvel Universe. I think that would be really fun. But
I would love to see what she considers important and what she just kind of skips over.
Exactly, right? Like, yeah, exactly. Or like the way that she relates like historical events would be very her-centric, I think. In a way that would be funny.
I would love it. That would be hilarious, actually.
Like,
really quickly, okay. I'm sorry. I wanted to go back really quickly to what you were talking about Amanda not fitting in to things and not fitting into the X-Men, because just something that came up when you were talking about that. I think that we can say that kind of feeling in her life can go all the way back to childhood. Yeah. Because being the only girl growing up with two brothers, right? And we know that Kurt and Stefan had a very, very
much closer relationship than she and Kurt did, or that she and Stefan did, frankly.
Yeah, like they had a blood pact. I mean, they were so super close. And, and then of course, I mean, to lose your brother is hard on anybody. And then, to
lose your brother because your other brother killed him, the brother who you're in love with. It's a lot going on.
Yeah, and really, when Stefan died, she lost both her brothers in that moment.
She also lost her mother because her mother decided it was Kurt's fault, and Amanda. That's when Jermaine Sardish became Amanda Sefton, undercover with a disguise illusion, and got close to Kurt to track him down in America so that she could protect him from their mother.
Yes, which I'm sorry. Okay, first of all, Amanda. Your whole disguise was feathered hair.
I think I have to assume it's a spell, because the second she drops the spell and she has the same face still, he's like, oh boy, he suddenly realizes that it's Jermaine. I think it was just like a spell to make him not recognize that it was the same person. I don't think she actually had a face disguise. But I mean, that said, it took Brian Braddock years to realize that Courtney Ross and Saturnine were the same person. And
I know, but Brian Braddock is a special.
He's not super attentive. God love him. Yeah. I do love him, but he's not paying the most attention to women's feelings and thoughts.
He's kind of the definition of a himbo at times, so
Oh, absolutely. Except when he's mean. I mean, sometimes he's not nice enough. I think he is firmly now, married Brian is for sure a himbo, but
yes.
But hard drinking single Brian was kind of a rake.
Nope,
honestly.
That's not it.
I mean, I love Excalibur so much, but we don't have to get into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that Amanda is, Bloody Bess certainly hasn't stuck, much as Chris has tried. Actually, I mean, I loved the Paragon Collection prologue to Days of Future Past. Most people won't get to read. I happen to have been a crazy person who bought that Paragon Collection thing from Marvel Made, so I read it. And it's a Days of Future Past prequel starring Sage and Bloody Bess. It's the most Chris Claremont of the 21st century story that could ever happen. But, Bloody Bess hasn't been used by any other writers. So Kurt hasn't had a love interest who has otherwise stuck. I liked the weird vibe between him and Stacey X, honestly, in Way of X. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing that develop. Because I think that the priest and the whore thing that that Spurrier's complicating there by making actually maybe she's right and you're an idiot. That kind of stuff I think is cool. And I liked their chemistry together, not really romantic chemistry, but general chemistry in the Joe Casey Uncanny. So I think that would be fun. But if you're not going to give him a mutant love, I mean, and also this new Iraqi love interest, Weaponless Sen, seems like she's going to be, I mean, covers lie, but they're in a romantic clinch. I mean, it could just be that they're swashbuckling and he loves a romance, though. We don't actually know what that means.
Well, again, who says it's going to stick? That happens every time with him. We've talked about on this pilot, he sees a woman and loses his mind, and then, oh, darn, doesn't work out.
Remember Kimry? There's always, something.
Anjuli, remember her?
Anjuli, who, another Courtney from another Earth. The thing that... And Megan's off limits, right? So there's that's foreclosed. So in terms of who else, I just think Amanda has a long history. She goes all the way back to 1976. That's such an early X-Men character that it feels like a shame not to have her around. And I do think that there are a few levels on which she would be an interesting person to have. She's a human who was a member of the X-Men, but now isn't necessarily going to feel super welcome on Krakoa per se. She is Kurt's girlfriend, who the other X-Men never really took the time to get to know particularly. I think that she and Madeline probably know each other really well because they were the girlfriends at the same time.
I was thinking about that and how that relates to what's going to be happening with New Mutants, with Madeline coming back.
They're
and
in
limbo. And I'm like, there's got to be a way you can just bring Amanda in there somewhere. Just throw her in there.
Yeah, I mean, I have an extensive headcanon about Amanda and Candy and Madeline as the human girlfriends of the X-Men in that period. I mean, when Candy is attacked by the Morlocks at her penthouse and Kurt teleports her into his place with Amanda and drops her in the hot tub famously. But Amanda knows her really well and is taking care of her. They're clearly friends. I think there's sort of something under the surface here that we never saw. Amanda, because she has powers, gets to actually team up with the X-Men sometimes. But not that frequently. Part of that is the winding way, which is another, we haven't really explained yet. It's a concept that I find really, really cool. And I like it as the way that witchcraft theoretically works in the Marvel Universe. I think that, unfortunately, the Wanda solo kind of futzed with that, and now I don't know exactly how witchcraft works. So,
well, I feel like there's different levels as to way
there can be different practices, but if this kind of witchcraft that Wanda's doing exists, it doesn't really make sense that Margali Sardish would do something that's not as powerful all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like the winding way is basically like with the phases of the moon, it's like very feminine power. Like you become more powerful or less powerful. So on some days of the month, Amanda is like Doctor Strange caliber. Most of the time she's like a step down, and there's like a week or so where she is very weak as a mage. So, and that's also true of Margali, but like magnified a bazillion times because she's like super powerful. So I liked that idea. I think it's an interesting limitation to place on a character. I like when characters have, like, I think Storm's claustrophobia is interesting. Like, I like when it's a creative choice rather than just, you know, something simple, because that creates more story, right? Like, if Amanda can't fight a wizard duel next Thursday because the moon is going to be behind the third house of Jupiter or whatever, like, then that's a problem for her that she would have to figure out if she was having to tackle a problem herself, or like if she and Kurt were on a long-term mission, her power levels would change. Like, I just think that's a cool element to the character, and I like, especially when Magik has limitations on it, because I think otherwise Magik can become too much of a get out of jail free card narratively.
That winding way personification is so weird though, because like the feminine energy, and it's like a week or so a month. Like, it seems like a weird personification of like a woman's period.
Of the menstrual cycle.
Like during one week of the month you can't do it. And like
it absolutely, no, because it's basically, here's the thing. Chris Claremont was very involved in a Wiccan social circle in the 70s in New York City.
Yeah.
And so it's drawing very specifically on like a Dianic Wiccan perspective of like a witch's power shifting with the menstrual cycle in the phases of the moon. It's very much that. It's like blood bending from Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's like a bunch of things like that in fantasy. And now, I will say, there are men who practice the path of the winding way in the Marvel Universe. It's not specifically a female power. So, but it's a lunar mystical concept. The idea that we wax and wane, which is connected because of the tides and whatnot to like thoughts about the menstrual cycle. I like it because I think that what's fun is the ways, like, it's this feminine stereotype kind of thing. But what's interesting to me is the ways that gets undercut. Like, Margali cheats in 90s Excalibur. She seizes the soul sword from where Amanda had put it and kills everyone ahead of her on the winding road, which lets her skip the line, essentially, and just always be powerful. And Amanda is horrified by that. Like, but that's Margali. But that's Margali saying, like, I don't have to listen to the moon if I don't want to. There are ways around these limitations. So and that's very like aggressive, like stereotypically like masculine conquering of her, right? That's when she becomes the Red Queen of the London Hellfire Club. I think that arc just never goes fucking anywhere because it's circa Onslaught, and it just all, I feel like it gets resolved off panel between issues, which is crazy.
One of the things I love that I've seen, well, this was a lot in the Nightcrawler mini, well, not even a mini, it's a 12 issue series.
It's like a maxi, yeah.
Yeah, it was, but I do love that they were able to really show like the dichotomy of Margali as both like a mother, because she really is very mothering, especially when the
and she loves them, yeah,
and she does love them. She really does, and she raises them well. She's a good mother to them, but she's a witch,
but she's an evil witch also. Yeah. It's very like Rapunzel-y, right? Like,
I was thinking of Tangled the second she said
that.
Well, I mean, she's not evil to the kids. Like, she raises her children with much love, and she cares for them.
She's evil to everybody else. The kids, the one time she does something really bad, and it's because this is it's really bad, but it's because she's desperate, is when Belasco is torturing her in limbo and she switches bodies with Amanda because Amanda's is the only body that she can switch with because, again, they're very closely biologically related, which is, like, Chris didn't read this comic. But
that's why that has to work.
But that's why Amanda dumps Kurt and leaves Excalibur, because she's been taken over by Margali and been cast down to hell, where Belasco is now torturing her in Margali's body. And eventually, like, she seeks Kurt out and they rescue Amanda. But that's when Amanda's just like, we're good, Mom. Like, I don't need to talk to you, actually. We're cool. Like, we don't, by which I mean, we're not cool. Like, I don't need to see you.
We don't need to talk.
This is way worse than that time in high school you told me that I looked like I gained 10 pounds. Like, this is way
right. Like, you told me I looked ugly in that dress, and I've been upset about that for 20 years. However, this sucks more. Sorry. This sucks really bad. Worse. So, I think I think those aspects of the characters are interesting. I think that she would be an interesting... The Scarlet Witch is so tied up in, like, to go back to the Busick and Perez period, the Scarlet Witch is so tied up in fantasy magical stuff in the Marvel Universe, like Chthon, Chaos Magic, and all that I think Amanda and Margali, if it was more researched, would be an interesting way to talk about, like, actual Romani cultural practice in a way that Marvel Comics has teased out with characters like Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom, but has never really gotten into. And they could be sort of more, not realistic because they're witches with magical powers who are superheroes and supervillains, but just more authentic, maybe a little bit, in the way that, like, the Giant Size Thunderbird issue is bringing in a lot of, like, authentic cultural perspective from Indigenous artists and writers. So, like that, I think, I don't know.
They have an opportunity with Amanda too to have a Romani character who's not ever been a villain. She's like,
she's never been evil. Even, like, she's made, again, like, slightly amoral choices on occasion, but in the same way that a pragmatic character like Emma or Wolverine would do.
Well, like, she's always been on the side of good. Like,
always been on the good guy's side.
She's never been with the Hellfire Club. She's never been with the Brotherhood. She's never been.
Yeah. She never went crazy and decimated the mutant race. Like, she's never right. She, like, exactly. She's not. There's no baggage in that way with her.
Which is funny because if you Google
the worst
Amanda
she's ever
Sefton,
did is screwed her brother.
Yeah, but if you Google Amanda Sefton, there will be a page that pulls up that's a villain's wiki, and she's on that. And I saw that, I was like, when has she been a villain? Like, what?
Oh, in the Marvel Mangaverse, actually, she is.
Oh, the Mangaverse.
Okay. In the Mangaverse, she's an evil witch. Oh. She has weird tattoos. It's like it's a one shot. So she and Storm are like mystical rivals. You do not have to worry about this.
We don't accept that canon.
Yeah,
here.
we're gonna take your advice on that.
Yeah, we don't accept that canon here.
But that's probably why. It's probably like Mangaverse Amanda Sefton, because other, like, 616 Amanda has always been a good guy.
Well, that's what's crazy. I read it, and it's the history of it's 616, but they put her
weird.
As a villain.
Well, she's not. I don't know what to tell you. She's like even Margali is not always a villain. Like, Margali is very much like a neutral character who then sometimes just has a real evil scheme.
Yeah, she's a gray character overall.
Yeah. She's like
Margali always seems to kind of have her own plan to do things, and sometimes her plan just kind of crosses with what the X-Men need to do, right?
She's not unlike Dr. Doom. I mean, that's one tropey thing about her and him, is like the idea of sort of like this duplicitous sort of like Romani schemer who isn't aligned with anyone, right? Like that's kind of a bit of a stereotype culturally of like the way people regard Romani people. But I think that's in both cases undercut by other very interesting and non-stereotypical things about the character. Dr. Doom, as like the leader of a nation, is obviously a very different sort of character from the stereotype that you would expect. Because those stereotypical depictions tend to be obsessed with like itinerant nomadic living or things like that, right? So he's like got a castle. He's staying put. And Margali, it is the deeply loving relationship she has with her children, because you look at, I mean, you mentioned Tangled. I really dislike that movie because I do think that the way, and it's like a Jewish screenwriter, so whatever, but like he should call his mother, because the way that Mother Gothel is designed in that movie, she feels like a Jewish or Romani woman who has stolen this blonde child and is obsessed with her magical straight silky blonde hair. And I find the whole movie really off-putting for that reason. Like, because she is evil. Like, she means well, but she's abusive, and she stole this child. And like, Margali didn't steal Kurt, right? Which is like the nasty, libelous stereotype of Romani people. Yeah. She was entrusted with this baby, or found this baby and raised him as her own and gave him a very good life, despite the fact that he looked like a monster to everyone around them. It's the opposite of the actually somewhat stereotypical backstory. And I love Megan. Megan is one of my favorite characters. But the idea that her superstitious parents hid her away because she looked like a monster. Margali is also a Romani person who doesn't have that superstitious reaction. She's just like, this is a mutant. Or even if she doesn't know what he is, she's just like, he's not a demon. It's fine. Like, it's going to be fine. He's a boy.
Yeah.
And I think he's cute. Look, he's got a tail. He's blue. It's cute to me. You know, she has a much more sanguine attitude about it. There's also lots of implications that she and Mystique know each other. And that story has never been told. So...
Well, I think in the Draco, they tried to make the idea that
she was like working with Azazel's.
Yeah,
she was like Azazel's apprentice or something. Yeah.
Well, Chuck Austin really tried to get to the point where he was trying to make it seem like that Azazel and Margali were like lovers at one point, and there was a chance.
And then maybe he was also Amanda's father.
Yeah, it was really.
Why would you make it weirder, Chuck?
I mean, look at most of the run that Chuck wrote.
Yeah.
I was gonna say he made a lot of things weird.
Yeah, but yeah. So I think that these characters, while they have the stereotypical aspect of like, I'm a fortune teller in a circus, I have magical powers that, you know, a lot of Romani characters in fiction, particularly in fantasy fiction like superhero comics, have. Amanda is a very modern woman. Like, she's like forged that way, where it doesn't, or even like Danny Moonstar. She's actually more like Danny because she has a connection to the culture in a way that like Forge has rejected the culture. But she's like Danny. Like, Danny is, you know, wearing jeans and like going to the mall, and it's like she doesn't have to be like an exotic, mysterious character in that way. And I think that that's cool about them, because I feel like those are groups that so often get pigeonholed into those sort of very racialized depictions. And I think that Amanda now, in part, it's because historically Amanda's just drawn as a white lady. She sometimes has like, you know, but the thing is, like, a lot of Romani people do look like that, especially in Hungary and Germany, where Kurt was raised. So, but I do think that, like, I liked that she was mixed race and evolution. I mean, it was sucked that she wasn't a witch.
Yeah,
that was so disappointing. But it was cool to just like give her a different look from like all of those other blonde ladies. But you know, if I got to write her, I'd probably give her like a tan.
Yeah,
you know?
I had a theory that in evolution they made her a different race just because they just were desperate to
underline that they're not related.
Yeah, like as far away from the sister thing as possible.
Yeah, like, no, her dad's black. They're not related. Like they don't look anything alike, right? Yeah. Like, even when he's in the hologram, like, he does not look like her, right? Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I could see that.
Yeah, that was my thought on that.
But they kept, her mother was named Margali, and like was like Margali Sefton, and was Romani in the cartoons. That was cool. Yeah. But you know, I mean, it's just one of those things where I think that that is a minority that hasn't had adequate representation, and most of the characters who are Romani look white in the Marvel universe in terms of how they've been drawn. So I think that these are characters. Margali, though, is notably like drawn with, when she's not green, which sometimes she is because she's doing magic and whatnot, but she naturally has like a deep olive skin tone and like black curly hair, sort of Mother Gothel-esque. And I think that, you know, while there's nothing wrong with Amanda being a blonde, I feel like you could draw her in such a way, sort of like how they've been slowly making Storm look more appropriate over the decades.
Yeah.
Like, and she finally has a hair texture that makes more sense. And like things like, I think that we're getting closer to, more equitable representations slowly. It's superhero comics. It's never going to be like a race to the finish line, because it's not like it can't, you gotta just buckle in, because these things take time. But I think these characters are potentially an opportunity. They're not Doctor Doom. They're not Wanda and Pietro, who have a lot of stuff like historically tied up in them that's very complicated.
Yeah.
You could just do a story about their culture and Kurt's role in there, because Kurt was raised in the culture too. Like, you could do something interesting about it that wouldn't be sensationalized or exoticizing. I think that would be cool. But most of all, like, I just think that I'm always interested in the girlfriend characters getting an opportunity to do their own thing, like, out without the man. And she's never, apart from, like, even in her solo mini, and this is like, I get it narratively, it makes total sense to have Kurt in the story, but even in that story, Kurt is narrating. Yeah.
And even, it's funny because she tells him like 3 times, she's like, you should go, and he's like, I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere. And it's like, okay, so is she the protagonist or is he the protagonist? Like, he won't, like, she's the protagonist, to be clear, but I'm just saying, like, it's framed all around him and him reacting to her and how much she's changed and all of that stuff. And I like it. I like that mini a lot. I wish it was collected. It's crazy that they haven't collected it, because you put Magik on the cover of a trade paperback, people will think it's about Illyana and they will buy it. Free idea if Marvel's listening. Just like, put that out, and you won't be lying. It is called X-Men: Magik by Dan Abnett and Annie Lanning. That's what that miniseries is called. But also, if it was collected, it could be on Marvel Unlimited. And right now, when I try to explain to people that I like this character, they can't read this fucking comic because you have to get it on eBay or whatever. So that's not.
It was very
ideal.
hard to find. Yeah, it's not even on Marvel Unlimited. It's just like
because it's never been collected, and until they collect it, they don't do the digital recoloring for ebook or digital comic. So that's why, Gen X mostly isn't. Gen X is going up now slowly because they're putting out the Epic collections. But that's why there's a gap in Weezy's X Factor. That's why most of Gen X is not on Marvel Unlimited. Whereas Excalibur is all there because they did Epic collections years ago of all of Excalibur. So it's just what they, now that the big corporate bosses own the X-Men again, we've been seeing a lot more collections of X-Men stuff. So especially with how popular the Krakoa era is, people want to go back. So like the Gen X epics are finally happening. There's some Weezy X Factor epics happening. They're doing more omnibuys. So I have hope. But this is such a weird one in like the middle of nowhere in a very weird period of the X-Men. It's between Claremont Revolution and Grant Morrison's New X-Men. Like, it's a very weird.
Apparently, it connects to something called Black Sun, which I don't know what that.
Well, Black Sun was Black Sun was a Claremont X-Men event. Might have been Claremont and Simonson even. That was like in 99, 2000, I think. And that's where Amanda debuts as the second Magik, but it's not revealed who she is. You have to piece it together if you've read enough Chris Claremont comics. But she helps them deal with like limbo stuff. And then she pivoted out of that into this solo miniseries by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning.
So it could be part of that kind of collection if they collected Black Sun.
If they collected Black Sun, but I think Black Sun is collected with the Claremont Revolution, and he didn't write this,
Okay, gotcha.
So I don't know when they will, but they should. If anybody's listening,
they should.
Everybody tweet it. Collect Magik. # collect Magik.
But like specifically Amanda Sefton, because otherwise they'll just collect the incredible 80s Magik miniseries about Illyana that's been collected like 50 times.
Which is also fantastic.
It's one of the best things Claremont ever wrote. I'm just saying it's been collected a ton. I have it in 2 different omnibuy because it's in the New Mutants omnibus and in the Uncanny X-Men omnibus because they really want to make sure you read it.
Well, and that story is so interesting because you're right. Like it's narrated from Kurt's point of view, and that's off-putting at times. It reminds me of, I know this is a X-Men and Marvel podcast basically, but Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, was a limited series that just finished, and it's told from
the Tom King and Bilka Seberly series.
Yep, that one. And it's told from the point of view of a brand new character, basically outside in, narrating her story, but basically her observations of Supergirl and such. And at first it's kind of off-putting, but I actually really liked it, and I like Nightcrawler's point of view on Amanda here because
I like it in the comic.
look how much she's doing. And you get to see his awe being like, wow, like she's actually grown and holy shit, she's in charge of this world now. Like this is not the same woman I knew, but also it is. And wow, it's really cool, that narrative style.
I think the narration is actually essential to this mini being good. I'm not saying they shouldn't have done that. I just, even in her solo miniseries, Kurt is narrating her story and her life. The only time she has ever gotten to do something without Kurt, she makes a couple cameos in Doctor Strange stuff in the 80s, and she pops up in Academy X very briefly just to get her ass kicked because she's not the real Magik. And there's the 2-issue arc of the Muir Island X-Men in 89. That's it. Every other story she's in, it's a Kurt story. And so I just think that there's enough to this character by herself, potentially. It's all potential. Like, this is the thing. I think that she's cool. I think her relationship with Kurt is really fun. I think that she's funny and self-aware about how crazy her life is, which is always kind of enjoyable. I think that the drama with her mom is really potentially fun and cool. Because that kind of mother-daughter relationship is also not something you see explored that much in superhero comics. Rogue and Magik are a really good one that they've done a lot of stuff with. But you don't see it that often generally, and I think that this would be another cool option. It's much more often like father-son or father-daughter in these dynamics in superhero comics, just because male characters tend to get more focus in that way. And specifically, a relationship between two female characters with no men involved at all in like what's going on is not, always the most traditional superhero narrative. So I just think that there's a lot here, and I think that it would be a cool person to bring back now. And I have a lot of ideas about how I would do it if it were up to me. But I
pay
just
attention,
hope that
Marvel.
It would be cool if anybody did. I would love if Cy brought her back in Legion of X. Like, I think that it's the.
I think one. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think one thing that the Krakoa era has shown us is that really anything is possible.
Exactly.
And you can take any character and you can make them interesting because, if you told yourself 10, 15 years ago that today the main characters that were really the most important characters to X-Men were Doug Ramsey and Destiny and
and Revanche and
and Orphan
like,
Maker and Nanny were a great book.
We're being shown that all of these characters, and this is the premise of my podcast, is every character has something in them. I mean, there are a couple where I'm like, we could do without. But for the most part, I really do think if with the right writer and the right idea and the right story, any character can be really meaningful. And I think that particularly with these love interest characters, these women who were always secondary to the hero's narrative, it's just fun to get to see them do something else.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see her get to do that, bottom line.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great place to end. Let's see Amanda do more. Let's see
I'd love
her
to.
out
Please,
there.
God.
Yeah, please. Let's see her out there. Let's see her do more. Actually, wait, I want to say one more thing. I did really enjoy them as exes. I know you love them together.
No, I like them. I like them as, I don't need them to get back together. Like, I would be fine with them just being funny exes like Scott and Emma kind of are now.
Yeah.
Or the way that like Storm and Forge, I think, could be if they were ever in close quarters. But like, I do think that would be a funny. No one ever really like writes them together anymore. But I do think that like a Storm and Forge were just like, remember when we like almost got engaged? That was crazy. It would be like kind of funny to revisit now. No, I like fun exes. I have fun exes myself. So like, it's not something that I'm opposed to. I think that it's unlikely that they're going to put her and Kurt back together because the relationship is such a like running gag of like the weirdness of it. That's what I think is an opportunity to give her the chance to do something else, because she doesn't have to be his girlfriend.
I'd love to see her get into a relationship with a different X-Man and Kurt be like, what?
You're dating my girl sister? You can't do that.
She could show up at the gala this year. We don't know. I mean, big one.
I'd love it. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing her. I just feel like dating Nightcrawler is like kind of a lesbian activity.
Oh my God.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know what? Can I say what would be Kurt's nightmare is if she gets with Rachel?
Right. She's not going to get with Rachel. She's not going to get with Rachel. That was my first thought. She's not going to get with Rachel, but I do feel like if she was like with Jennifer Kale or like some other like queer witch lady, he would be like, was ist? And it would be like, again? Like, this keeps happening to me. And I think that would be funny. Like, she would be bi. I'm not saying like she's been gay all along, but like, I think it would be funny. If like,
I mean, even if she just like slept with Rachel once and it was
that I would be down for. Yeah. Here's my thing. I am very, very into Rachel and Betsy, so I just don't want anything to upset my apple cart there. But but if it was something we revealed at the past, that, like Amanda's like, okay. I mean, if Amanda was like, oh yeah, like Rachel gave me a wild night years ago, and Kurt's like, what?
There you go.
Like that would be fun. I would enjoy.
I'm having a heart attack for Kurt. Like these are two women he was going to propose to.
Well, he should not. To Rachel, that was insane. I'm sorry. That's the craziest he has ever been, including like they mind controlled me into being a priest. Like he has never been crazier than when he was like, I'm going to propose to my wife to be Rachel Summers. That was psychotic behavior, and God love him. But like, no, you need to see your therapist. You need to get a psychiatrist on the line. You need to take some psychiatric medications because you are behaving in a way right now that is unmedicated, my love.
The best part is like he was talking to Bobby about that. How did Bobby not be like, oh, no, honey, no, honey, no.
Because Bobby was too busy dealing with his own issues.
It took Bobby long enough to realize that. Anyway, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. I do have to get going soon.
Yes. No. Well, yes, Connor, thank you so much for coming by. This has been such a treat. It has been so much fun to talk about Amanda Sefton for this long. I've not even thought about it this long, but I love her. And thank you. I wouldn't have read the Magik miniseries if not for this. So
I'm glad you did. I'm surprised you've never read it before because there is good Kurt stuff in there. So I'm glad
there is really good Kurt stuff. You know why I never read it? Because it's not collected anywhere. That's why.
No, it's not fucking collected. And it's about Nightcrawler. Again, like it is. Like he's so popular. Just collect this fucking book. It's 4 issues.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a tiny trade. Charge people like $15 for it. You can do that, and it will have Magik on the cover, and they will pay for it, and then they'll be like, I got tricked. This isn't the character I thought it was, but they've already paid for it. So just do it.
Listen, Marvel, make it. I'll buy 10 copies myself, and I'll just put it down the street.
Period.
So there you go. All right?
Period.
Done. Well, Connor, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, Twitter at Dream of Organon, Instagram at Connor Goldsmith. You can find CEREBRO on Twitter and Instagram at CerebroCast. You can find everything about the podcast at CerebroCast.com. Season 2 is wrapping up right about now. Season 3 will debut, I think, mid-May. I'm really excited. I just need a couple weeks because it's like I just did 25 weekly episodes and like, okay, and they're long. So I'm like, I need a second. But I love doing the show. It's wild. There are a lot of bonus things starting to go up on the Patreon at patreon.com/CerebroCast, $5 a month, the House of Zaladin tier. I just had, it may be up by the time you hear this, I did like a 3-hour interview with Teenie Howard, my friend and client, about Excalibur, Knights of X, and her run on Catwoman that's going on right now. That was a lot of fun, and I've got more stuff coming down the pipe on the Patreon, but weekly episodes, CerebroCast.com. And thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, no, this was great. We'd love to have you back eventually. Maybe one day when your Amanda Sefton book comes out, we'll...
Maybe. Who knows, right? Yeah.
You can find us at simplyamazingpod.com. That's where we have all of our socials, our Twitter, our Facebook. We are on the Instagram. We're on Twitch. We're doing lives. We actually just did a live on April 1st for April Fool's Day. It wasn't a fool. If you missed it, you were the fool. Am I right?
It's true. You missed all the giveaways. Like, do you know how much shit we have to give? Like, we have issues.
We got subscriptions, girl. We got subscriptions. Mm-hmm. Well, Lauren, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at friendlymBHDBI. I'm on Instagram too. I don't do as much on there though. And you guys can check out my live show Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern at Friendly MBD show. And coming up in April, you might see a simply amazing guest on that show with me to talk about Legion of X. So soon to be seen, soon to be heard.
Yay! All right, everybody. And you can find me at the OG Nocturne. That's the OG NACHTURNE. And if you are out there and you're thinking to yourself, wow, if I date my brother, am I going to be the queen of limbo? No, it's not going to happen. But it's okay. You're still simply amazing.